Hi.
Hey girl, we have a big, deep, heavy episode today.
This feels like when like a reality TV show, they're like, they need to like talk about something serious. And
Yeah.
there's like the somber music in the back.
That's what we're talking. That's today.
Yeah,
for us
today.
So this might not be the funniest episode. I'm sure we'll find a way to still be ourselves. But we wanted to talk about something that's very important to both Annie and myself. That's a big part of our journeys, especially as it relates to imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And we also want to be very transparent about something that people are getting better about talking about, but it's still kind of taboo, I think.
For sure.
So we are going to talk about anxiety and anxiety medication.
That was the
ESPN.
That was ESPN done by a Jamaican air horn.
Yes. Love that. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. So if you struggle with anxiety, or even if you don't, think you have enough anxiety for medication, I would definitely stick around for this one, because you'll see. Yeah. And I think, what we really want to tie back to is that so much of imposter syndrome, the underlying issue is anxiety. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't feel like we belong in certain rooms, at certain places, in certain jobs, with certain friends because of anxiety. And if you can address the anxiety, hopefully your imposter syndrome subsides.
And this podcast is all about like helping you to do the hard things too, or do the things that you feel impostery about. And oftentimes you can't do that without some meds.
And let's also, so there's two things I'm going to give up front. Number one, I know you probably couldn't tell. We are not doctors.
Yeah, I know.
We're not doctors. I know it's shocking. But we're not going to just whatever we say, it's just our own experiences.
Yes.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
We're just kind of telling our own journeys with medication and therapy and anxiety and all that. But also, the other thing I want to issue is a trigger warning, because when I talk about myself, there's nothing that happened to me, but just some really deep topics that might set you off if you're, currently going through something. So just take that, I guess.
Yeah. And my goal is for every parent, and I say parent, not just mothers, but every parent to stop grinning and bearing and suffering through some of the hardest parts of parenthood.
Yes.
And just get a little, get help if you need it, because that's really important. And we're going to talk, like you said, we're going to talk about our journeys, but these medications have a purpose, and I want to just destigmatize needing to lean on them sometimes.
Yeah. So we're this is going to be very unplugged. We're turning down the lights. We're going to interview each other. You're going to be in on the conversation.
Yeah.
And let's just do it. So okay. I'm going to start. I'll just kind of go through my, kind of history with anxiety and how I identify my kind of trajectory to have gone. And then if you have questions, just jump in. We'll kind of interview each other.
My first question though is, you have one of those famous people hats on.
Yeah.
The indescript black leather hats that I only have seen you and famous people wear. So where does one buy this famous person hat?
Aritzia.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. So if you walked around Nashville with that and sunglasses on, people would 100% think you were famous. People would be like, it's Maren Morris.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to do it more often.
Yeah, you should.
Amazing.
You didn't like that. Did you not like that?
No, I do.
Okay, great. All right.
Okay, so let's talk about, I feel like the first thing I'll say is I feel like I'm in the therapy chair, but I've been looking over my shoulder my entire life. I've always had anxiety. I've always been scared of being victimized somehow. And I do think that's sometimes you're just born with that, and sometimes it's learned or what. But I feel like I remember hearing the news on in the background. You know what I mean? And I was always, I've, how some people are invincible? I was the opposite. I always thought it was going to be me. You know what I mean? I'm
yeah.
I'm going to die. I'm going to, I was just always afraid of everything. So literally I've been looking over my shoulder my entire life. The day I got a car, and I do think this is smart, because being vigilant is different than having anxiety, but they kind of tie in.
Yeah.
But there's never been a time ever since I got my driver's license that I didn't get very, very aware in a parking garage, or you know what I mean? I've always been checking, kind of have my fist up in a parking garage, you know?
Which is a biological, like, that's, you know, like your amygdala activating and trying to protect you. And it's usually like, it's a biological thing that our bodies do when we can't, it's like we can't, it's on overdrive. Like yours was on overdrive. You need to be probably casing every parking garage that you were in, but like you just couldn't turn it off.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So that I guess I'm just like, I know that's like a small example, but just that's the type of person I am. That's kind of how I'm wired. So I feel like it's never been so debilitating. And also, I mean, I was born in the late 80s, like, you know, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, I just don't feel like taking anxiety medication was in the conversation.
No.
And if it was very, very stigmatized. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't have even thought about it. Like it was never in my view. So I feel like I started to really feel the anxiety like pull in my senior year of college, just like, what am I going to do after this? And I was never like the person who I'm like, I need to be in college forever. Like I actually couldn't wait to graduate and like move to the city and like do the adult thing. That's actually was I didn't know myself in high school or college at all. Like I became who I was. I feel like my life started when I moved to New York after college when I was 21. But that also, you know, when you're graduating college and you don't have a job yet and you're not, you know, a lawyer or a doctor or like you don't have a track, there's some anxiety there. So that was the first time I remember being like wow, I'm like very anxious. Mm-hmm. So the good news is I got a job very quickly after college and I loved it. It was great. And, you know, I moved to the city and I was definitely always the type of person that like, I love New York, but like, you know, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of people in one area. So you're always like checking out who's the cuckoos like around you.
Yeah. There's like loud noises constantly, weird smells.
It's
a very overstimulating place for your central nervous system.
And I was the type of person though, I would walk into a subway car and if someone looked off to me, I would get out and wait for the next train. Like that was always me. Cause I'm like, I'm not going to go out because that fucking crazy person like had an episode on a subway. Like that's always, again, this is how I'm wired. So then like cut to, I have like a defining moment and I'm going to kind of tell the story in a full way. So I remember being in, I want to say 5th grade. I actually looked this up before this episode because I wanted to be accurate. So I was in 5th grade when the Columbine shooting happened in Colorado. And I remember it on the news and it was like the first time to my knowledge, to my whatever, that was someone took a gun into a school and murdered students. Like that was, and again, I was, what are you in 5th grade, 10 or 11? Yeah. Something like that. But I remember being so freaked out by that because I'm like, as we all are, school should be safe. That should be a safe space. Like I knew people killed people with firearms, but it didn't feel possible that it could be in a school.
And it was really the first
it was a defining moment in our culture for sure in America. And then, but that was always in the back of my mind. And when I would see things on the news for the next, call it 15 years, I remember always kind of having this subconscious, like, okay, it only happened in that school once. It only happened in a school once. And that was me like self-soothing of like, you know, like a school is a safe space. And that was a freak thing. That was a one-time thing. Cut to, I'm going to like try to get through this without crying because it's like, it's still like heavy to even talk about. I was 24 living in New York and I had this mounting anxiety that was like kind of came and went throughout my life. And then Sandy Hook happened. And I had no connection to Sandy Hook in terms of like, it was like maybe an hour away from where I grew up. So it wasn't that. I didn't know a single family. I didn't know the kids. I have never been the same since that day. I've never been the same because I remember thinking, I'm like getting chills. I remember thinking I'm like, so like all of my fears are coming true. Columbine wasn't an isolated incident and they killed babies. Like they were, what were they in kindergarten and first grade? Like the kids, I've never been the same since that day. And that was, how long ago was that? 11 or 12 years ago?
Yeah.
I remember
we're like the same age and I was 23.
Right. So I remember I was 24 and I'm 36 now. So that's how long ago that was. And
we didn't even have kids.
No, but I wasn't engaged yet. Like I was, I can't stress this enough. That was the defining moment in my anxiety journey. Number one defining moment because it was just, I mean, I don't need to explain why that should set anyone
Yeah,
off, but throughout life, I've told therapists and other people, and they're like, oh, wow, like that was your defining moment. And it always surprises me that it wasn't anyone else's. I'm like, that ruined me. I've never been the same. So for weeks after, I was working in an office in New York City, and I was in outside sales. So I was on the subway and walking around the city the whole day. For 2 weeks, I had one of my male coworkers walk around with me the entire day. I just couldn't do it. I was just like, I couldn't. Like, I was so scared.
Yeah.
And so all over the place. And I didn't start therapy then. Like, maybe I should have, but like, back then, I don't know. I just wasn't thinking. And then, I started to make the connection down the line, when I had my own kids. And I feel like I did pretty well postpartum. Like, everyone has really bad, I feel like postpartum anxiety and depression should be like treated even without having it.
Yes.
Like,
don't make a mother sit there and do a self-evaluation of whether or not you have it. Just assume you have some form, because it's the most life-altering thing you're going to ever go through.
For sure. So I think with all things considered, considering my disposition, like with anxiety, I think I handled postpartum life pretty well. But then when my kids started to go to school, that's when it became not like unlivable for me. So much of I've had the same therapist now for 10 years.
Wow.
And he is not in state. Like, I've been virtual with him for most of my time with him. He's like probably the most important person in my life. Like,
it's a long distance relationship.
Yeah, it's a long distance relationship. He has shaped me. I told Annie this, and this is really dark, but I've said to him before, I'm like, what am I going to do when you die? Like,
he probably loved
that. Yeah. But like, I'm like, but he's a critical part of my life.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be who I am without him. And he knows me better than anyone in the world. So, it was getting to the point where I was like, I can't do this I wanted to pull my kids out of school. I was like, I want to just like I just want to keep them by me at all times. But knowing that's not the right thing to do.
Right.
Knowing that's not the right thing to do, but wanting to protect them at all times. I would literally got to the point, and I'm a spiritual person. I'm not like a deeply religious person, but it got to the point where I would drop them off at school, and then I would pray that they made it home every single day. Yeah. Like, it was really fucking dark.
Yeah.
And,
but so not normal, like, but there are so many other people listening to this that did that today.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. So I talked to my therapist, and it probably for an entire year, maybe longer, I was like, I need to figure out a way to live with this and send my kids to school every day and not be thinking about it all day.
Yeah.
Their safety. While also like kind of like moving on with the rest of my life. But I was so clear. I do not want to go on medication. I do not want meds. I do not want to alter my my state of being. I don't want to live in a haze. And I think, I'll cut to the punchline. It doesn't do those things.
Yeah.
But I resisted it for so long. I took supplements. I took I went to holistic doctors, which I firmly believe in, by the way. Like, a lot of the work I do, like, with my health is through like integrative medicine. So I do think
Eastern medicine can meet Western medicine, and they can get along.
They can get along. There's a place for both of them in everyone's life.
Yes.
But I just felt like I am going to meditate and yoga my anxiety away.
Of this. Yeah.
And until one day, I actually don't remember exactly what the breaking point was, but I was like, I've done everything I can. Like, I cannot meditate this away. Like, I need help. So I went on a really low dose of sertraline, which is generic Zoloft. And this is June of 21, I want to say. So I think it's been like 2.5 years. Is that 2.5 years? Yeah. Almost 3. And when I tell you, it changed my life. Changed my life. I'm not the same person. Do I still have anxiety? Sure. But it doesn't the best thing I can tell you is it took the edge off. Now, was I very lucky? I had no symptoms, which is great. Like, I didn't have any of the possible symptoms that could happen to you when you
side effects.
Side effects. That's what I mean. Sorry.
I was like, it sounds like you did have anxiety.
I did have anxiety, but I did not have any side effects of taking an SSRI. So I got really lucky, and the dose was...
Which happens. I hear that
all the time.
Yeah, some people are like, I don't know, it just worked. That's great.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just first time worked.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And I just was like, it changed my life. Like, I don't think I realized before how like anxious and like how that anxiety showed up in my life. So like, I feel like I was always offended. Like I was very defensive, and I was very like, I had a hard time like having conversations that were really honest. I had a really hard time saying no to people. I had a really hard time like even just like I just feel like I got frustrated at people. I got so jealous of people. I got really jealous of people. And then I felt like, and I just feel like even though I knew what prompted me going on anxiety medication, what ended up happening was right? It just changed my whole demeanor in a good way. Like
in the best way.
It just took the edge off of everything in my life.
Things can roll off your back.
Yes.
Shoulders, back.
Shoulders, whole body.
They can roll off.
The whole body.
Like you're wearing just like a skosh of Gore-Tex waterproof on you now.
Right.
When you're on. That's the metaphor. It's like you just have a little bit of waterproofing on you now.
Yes,
and
waterproofing.
So like things can just kind of wick away.
Like it hits you, but then it doesn't really affect you.
Yeah.
And
but I want to stop you there because so many women specifically that I talk to say the same thing that you and I both said but I don't want it to numb me. I don't want it to dull my maternal intuition. I don't want it to make me a zombie.
I don't want to be a zombie. Yes.
And you're not, because when things hit you that really matter and need to permeate the Gore-Tex,
yes,
it does.
It does. Yes.
It does.
It does. It doesn't make you so bulletproof to life.
No.
But it just makes life easier.
Yes.
And it makes the human experience a little more tolerable.
So that then you can experience the human experience.
Yes.
Because when you're walking around with a male coworker because you're so anxious about, someone sneaking up on you with a gun or something awful happening again, or there being a mass shooting where you are, which is the reality of our life, like that.
You can't.
Why not make life a little easier?
Yeah. Why not take the edge off?
Take the freaking edge off.
Yes. So I feel like that was like kind of abridged when I look back on your life. Everyone's the main character in their own life. Everyone's, you can tell your story however you see it.
I mean, I better be the main character in a couple people's lives.
For sure. You're the main character in my life.
Thank you.
But I feel like, when I look back, I was trying to, because, we're storytelling here, and I wanted to be able to authentically tell like my kind of journey to getting to where I am. And those were really the big points. And I just hope that anything I just said, because I'm not someone who's having constant panic attacks. I have had one or two in my life, but I feel like some people, again, might even have imposter syndrome about, do I have enough anxiety?
Right. To merit
qualify.
medication.
Yeah. To qualify for therapy or medication.
Yes.
And the answer is, you probably do.
Yeah.
If you feel it, you can address it. And again, like if supplements and meditating do it for you, bravo. Like good for you. And I'm jealous in a way, but also it's just, there's no reason to suffer if you don't have to.
No. And I'm I really just believe that I'm so passionate about our generation of parenting. Yeah. Like we've gone through unimaginable shit. Like you're right. And that we're the generation now has to live in fear of being, involved in a school shooting, the school age generation now.
Yeah.
But we were the generation that like saw that happen and start and materialize.
And bring kids into it.
Yeah. And I can't believe we've never connected on this before, but I also remember exactly where I was when Sandy Hook happened and how it just changed my entire life. And I would like have nightmares and I would cry sometimes just randomly, just like, how can someone do that? Like it was the first time we saw this very like this side of mankind.
Right. It was the first of its kind.
It felt like the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And then our generation of parents and just our generation, like we also, we went through the financial crisis, which rocked people's bedrocks and their, belief in financial systems that were supposed to just work. Like that made people anxious about finances. It made our parents' generation anxious. It made us more anxious about entering the job market at that time because it was abysmal. And then,
how do you not have anxiety if you're a millennial?
Yeah. And then we were raised in the time of, more and more and more mass shootings. And then we lived through a pandemic. And for those of us that also parented through those things, like just make life a little easier.
Yep.
Make life a little easier. Take a little as Joelle and I like to call it, I'm on Lexapro. So my alter ego is Sexy Lexy. And then
and mine's Hoey Zoey. We like to have a little fun.
Yeah.
With our SSRIs.
Yeah. So
Zoey and Lexi just like keep this boat afloat.
They do. And gosh, so please, if you have imposter syndrome about like, no, I'm doing fine in life, or I don't need them because my anxiety isn't as bad as my friend who's having panic attacks here and there. Like, just, you probably do need it.
You probably do.
And we heard from so many of you on the friendship poll about social anxiety. And social anxiety is, I resent that word now because I feel like it's being overused. It's
misused.
And misused. Thank you. But if you are a person that feels things like some of the social anxiety that I used to have was like, I've shared before, where I would leave every social situation and drive my husband absolutely berserk because I'd be like, was that weird that I said that? How did I do? Did I talk to that person normally? Or I would like be debilitated by trying to make plans because I couldn't handle the plans not working out.
I have something bubbling up inside of me.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to flip to Annie's story, but this is the segue.
Okay. Yeah.
So Annie and I have been, how long have we been friends? 2 years?
Yeah.
Feels like a lifetime.
I know.
But when Annie and I started to get really close, we were planning dinner for your birthday.
Yeah.
And I knew this about you, that you have this kind of, and it's
Spiral.
yes, but it's also part of like your comedy. Like you make comedy out of it.
Yeah.
Of like how your social anxiety and like the interactions, like you were just saying, that drive Andre nuts.
Yeah.
So Annie and I were making dinner plans and we were already really good friends. And she was like, I said something. I'm like, so are we good for Thursday? It was something like that. It was a throwaway sentence.
Yeah.
30 minutes later, I saw that she was typing. Sends me this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this a text this long about
6 inches.
It was a long text about like, hey, I think the plans were actually on Friday. If you can't make it, that's totally fine. We'll totally and all that happened was
word vomit.
All that happened was I said the wrong day by accident. Like, and I was like, oh my God, Annie, I felt your spiral.
You felt it.
I felt your spiral. And I go, next time, be like, bitch, you had the wrong day. And I remember you were like, okay.
I like fell in love with you in that moment because I was like, God, like she just said that. And that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah. Like
you were just like, Annie, I said the wrong day. Relax. And I was like, wow, I felt so seen because on the flip side, on the other side of the phone was me like, Andre, she has the wrong day. So I'll just tell her, I'll just pretend like I had the wrong day. Yeah. And he was just literally looking at me like, I think she likes you and she's going to want to get dinner for your birthday.
I did.
And then
I just literally said Thursday instead of Friday. Yeah. It was something like that.
Yeah. And that was so powerful because you had, you were on Zoloft. So you saw exactly what was happening. And you were just like, Annie, I said the wrong day. You don't need to spend an hour spiraling on that.
Yes. And then Chad and my husband and I both know this about Annie. So then for a couple months, it just became like every time something like that happened, we would be texting Annie like, are you surviving this interaction? Yeah. Like it became something like kind of part of the conversation. So I like to, I'm going to turn it over to Annie to talk about more of her kind of like background with anxiety. But I will say, I feel like an influential part in making you go on medication.
You were. I remember we were talking about this podcast. We met to talk about this podcast and you were on the phone with your psychiatrist or whoever manages your meds. At Greenhouse, getting Zoloft because you were going on a trip and you were out of Zoloft.
Yeah.
And then you were like, what are you on? And I was like, I'm not on anything. And you were like, what?
Yeah.
But it
I'm
was
like, you?
Yeah. You were like, you? And then you were like, you would really just like take that job.
Yeah.
And then I did it because I just am a follower of Makeup X Joelle. I just follow. No, but I was definitely in the camp of like, but I'm doing, but I am making friends and everybody thinks I'm so easy to talk to. So my social anxiety clearly isn't showing through. So I'm fine. And then I met you and you were like, bitch, I see you.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing there on your typey type.
Yeah.
Stop typing. Yeah. But I actually have like a long journey too and it started with, I kind of am that person that a lot of really unbelievable things happen to over and over. Like, our house burned down. Our dog caught our house on fire in Seattle and we were not home. We were at work. And the dog lived and so did we. And, we were okay, but we lost every single thing that we owned in the house.
So crazy.
It was a brick house, so it like literally turned into a brick oven, and we lost all of our belongings, and the house had to be, it should have just been knocked down, but don't get me started on insurance companies. So we had to rebuild it from the inside. You know, I had really awful like abandonment kind of things happen. I have a lot of different familial estrangements that have occurred in my life that are, so I have this like very specific type of grief kind of woven throughout my life, which is the grief where like someone doesn't die, someone or something is still very much alive, but like you can't have it anymore. Like you can't have this relationship anymore, and you don't talk to this person, and it's, you know, a relationship that by societal standards you should have.
Well, it's lost.
It's lost. It's lost in like this really messy mindfuckery kind of way. And what I didn't realize was happening was like you, Joelle, I always believed that the scary, crazy, unbelievable thing would happen to me. But also I was just missing out on so much life because I didn't want to put myself in a risky position to be abandoned again, or to be, you know, to have someone not, to have a person who's supposed to love you go out of your life, or to have, you know, a house burn down and for you to lose all your stuff. And so I would like, that's where I, you know, a lot of my, like you said, that made me feel so good that you said that. Like a lot of my comedy started coming from that, because I would make jokes and make light of it and be like, you know, if I can just prove to everybody else that I'm okay and that I'm not anxiously unplugging every device in my house before I leave.
Right.
Like doing really, really anxious cycle things, like that I'm not like having trouble making friends because I'm so scared that like I'll go through another estrangement from someone. Like that's anxiety.
Yeah.
Those are manifestations of anxiety
100%.
that I was comedically wiping away. And when I finally went in, it was, when I finally was like, I need help, it was after talking to you, but it was also so sadly also wrapped around school shootings.
Yeah.
Like it was Uvalde and Covenant. Like I thought I would never be the same after Sandy Hook, and then I was never the same again. It just kept getting worse.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting worse.
It keeps getting worse.
And we have little kids.
Right.
And so I too went in and was like, I can't stop thinking about these scenarios. Like every time I drop my kids off, and especially when I stopped working, I was like, I don't think I should be sending them to daycare, because what if they die at daycare and I didn't even have a job?
Right.
I had that thought. And then I was like, fuck, I have to get help. Like this is so bad. Debilitating.
Yeah.
And I just like, I don't think I didn't want to admit that I needed it. And I did definitely have a lot of postpartum depression and anxiety. You know, I would get up and check if my kids were breathing all the time.
Yeah.
That
feels like a par for the course. I feel like we all did that,
It feels like par
right?
for the course, and we just don't have to suffer through it anymore.
Yeah.
And I was going to say on here too, and thank you, you led me to it. There's actually, they just released, I don't have the name of it, but you guys should look it up if you're a parent. They just released a specific SSRI anti-anxiety medicine for postpartum.
Wow.
That's not, it can be used kind of shorter term. It's not one that you're meant to maybe be on for a longer haul, like a Zoloft or a Lexapro or a Wellbutrin. It's supposed to be a little bit more like acute, and it treats the specific wiring in your brain after you've had kids that's causing that anxiety. Like I used to cross the street in Seattle with Olive in the stroller, and I'd get across the street safely, and then I would have like a panic attack and not be able to walk any further because I would think, what if a car had just hit us?
Right. Yeah.
And it didn't hit us.
Right.
But I would like sweat. I'd start sweating.
Yeah.
And thinking about it. And so like
that's like textbook.
Yeah. Textbook. But you just
like muscle through it.
You muscle through it. And then you almost have a pride when you muscle through it too.
Which is like, why? Why do we do that to ourselves?
We don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And we've also, you know, we've stigmatized in society anxious, overbearing mothers. And so I feel like we're all on a journey as mothers to prove that we're not an anxious and overbearing mother.
Right.
But what if you are, and that's okay, and you could just be taking a little bit of a medicine to make your life feel easier.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Like I was obsessed with, part of my journey too was like, I was obsessed with being the cool girl. Like I was obsessed with being like the woman who just seemed so chill.
You're like,
and,
I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom.
I'm a cool mom. And like, And what's funny is when I share sometimes that I'm on Lexapro, I've had people say like, I'm shocked. You're like the chillest parent I've ever met. And it's like, well, a lot of that is because of Lexapro. And also because like when you have a third kid, you're kind of just like, well,
whatever.
Jesus, take the wheel. This is chaos. But I kind of manufactured that because it wasn't happening for real.
I think the other thing too, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, is have you ever been in a room where you've said something like, well, yeah, because I take Lexapro or Zoloft or whatever. And then everyone's like, well, duh, everyone does. And I'm like, I've been in those situations too where I'm like, wow, if you just say that you do, like so many people are on these.
Yes. So many people.
There's no reason to be ashamed of this.
There's no reason. And it's like, I did have side effects. But
what do you mean? Like when you passed out in the car at gymnastics?
Yeah. I was so tired.
On Riley's birthday. Right?
Yeah. I was like, okay, we're going out for Joelle's daughter's birthday after gymnastics. So I need to just take a nap in my van right now.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to go run to Publix during gymnastics to go grab a cake. Do you want to come with me? And you're like, I'm just going to hang back.
And sleep.
In my car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's like, that's a bummer. But then we just went down and then we went down in dosage and then I wasn't tired anymore.
Right.
Like you just have to talk about it and don't grin and bear it through the side effects either. Just be like, I'm having this side effect, you know?
Right.
Yeah. God. But knowing Annie, people pleaser, I probably would have been like, well, I don't want to bother my psychiatrist and tell her that I'm sleepy. No. Everybody's tired.
Yeah.
But there's two things. One thing I want to say too is that this is where I guess I'm talking a lot about motherhood, but parenting in general. When you become a parent, especially a parent of young kids, a lot of medical professionals will dismiss everything you're going through as like, well, you're tired because your kids are waking up in the middle of the night.
True.
Well, this is happening. And well, you're stressed out all the time and your cortisol is high. Of course, you have kids. But like, I want us all to be the generation that's like, no, we don't have to live like that. We don't just have to accept all of these things as being extra challenging on top of the extra challenges that life in 2024 has.
No, you have to advocate for yourself.
You have to advocate for yourself.
And that's not that's a very like overdone thing to say. Like everyone's talking about that now in the medical field. Like you have to be your own advocate, but it's true.
But you do. Dads too. Like you have to be like, yes, I know what it's like to be sleep deprived from having a baby. This feels different.
Yeah.
Or, because I was going to say too, I think I probably like just, family medical history wise and stuff, like I probably also have suffered from depression in my life, but just grinned and bared it or chalked it up to like, well, yeah, I'm a college student and I have a million, exams. Of course this is hard. Or like, yeah, I'm depressed. My house burned down. Or like, yeah, I'm depressed. I'm going through this really hard thing when it's like, maybe it was clinical at some points. But what's beautiful and what's happened is that like now that I'm on Lexapro and my anxiety can just like shut up sometimes and like take a seat.
Yeah.
Like just sit down. Then it's like, oh, this feeling of like the sleeping made me think of it because I just had something really hard happen to me last week personally and I just wanted to sleep all the time. And then I realized like, oh yeah, this sleeping response you've had your whole life, Annie, is like it's a depression thing. And now I can actually deal with that.
Right.
And like figure that out because my anxiety is not just taking it all over.
That's really fascinating. I feel like, and also depression and anxiety are like sisters.
For sure.
But they're different.
And they compete. They compete in your brain.
Yeah.
Is how I've always felt. Like sometimes anxiety is like, we need to show up because we think that we're protecting you in this social situation. But really, this social situation is really hard for you because right now you're just kind of depressed and you're not feeling like socializing.
Right.
So they're constantly like vying for each other's attention. So
interesting.
Yeah. So just do it. Just do it.
I feel like it's just, again, it's an important conversation to be had. I also want to acknowledge that and I'm not recommending this because I've never done it, but I do want to acknowledge if you're not on an SSRI and you don't want to go that route, there are like so many practices now where like there's like assisted like either ketamine therapy or like psilocybin. Yeah. And I know that those were previously illegal drugs and now they are being used medically and really powerfully from my understanding. Like I know some people who have done those types of therapies that like from my understanding can rewire your brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have never done that before. And apparently if you're on an SSRI, I don't know how well those things work together. And someone email or DM me if I'm wrong. I've just kind of heard
people doing it.
Yeah. And just maybe it's less effective if you're already on an SSRI and then you do like a mushroom treatment of some kind. But I do know that it's being administered medically now.
Yeah.
And I've heard really, really powerful things about it.
Yeah. Like I'm so happy that we're growing up in that our kids are going to grow up in the generation where like they just, like, again, other cultures and societies have been doing for a long time. They just find ways to treat it. You don't just pretend it's not happening.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like
we're not in the brush it under the rug.
No, we're no longer there.
Yeah.
And like I was sharing earlier or in a different episode that I cold plunge, and a big reason why I cold plunge is it's really good for anxiety.
Is it?
Oh my God, yeah. Because your central nervous system, like have you ever heard of the vagus?
Yeah. The vagus nerve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had doctors or therapists in the past tell me to like put ice packs on my neck before bed to calm down. And cold plunging essentially is like taking that vagus nerve and like shutting it off for a second. So you can like, and I love it. Like I
think I'm too much of a baby.
It's really hard. It sucks a lot.
Yeah. How long do you do it?
My longest has been 5 minutes.
Holy shit.
But I've lately, then I got,
does it get easier throughout the 5 minutes?
Yes. After 3 minutes, it's much easier.
Okay.
Getting to 3 minutes is, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Should I do it?
You should try it.
Live on the podcast.
Oh my God. Yes, we should. I have a recording of the first time I ever did it.
Oh my God.
And your body just starts like, I just screamed.
It feels like a punishment.
It feels like a punishment, but then it feels really good because it's like, you just completely shut down your central nervous system.
Interesting. I could use that.
Yeah.
Could use a little cold plunge.
Just do a little cold plunge.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about like the Gore-Tex or like waterproofing analogy, because it takes a while for these medicines to work. And they tell you that when you start taking them. They're like, you need to give it like a month or two before you really feel the effects. And of course, I don't know. We all want instant gratification. So I was just like, no, I'll know right away. I'll be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
And I thought I was. And then right around like the 2-month mark, I remember I got an appointment reminder for a super important appointment for my daughter at Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt was like impossible to get into, and you have to wait months for these, medical appointments and stuff. And Maggie really needed to go. And the appointment was in 10 minutes. I'd gotten like the day wrong on my calendar. And past Annie would have been like, oh my God. Like I would have blamed someone else. I would have started spiraling, yelling. I probably would have been like, I probably would have gone to my husband and like started a fight with him about it and just wasted all this time when I could have just been in the car driving to the appointment. And I had this moment of like clarity where I just was like, oh, shoot. Okay. So I just like picked up the phone. And to some people, you're going to be like, is this novel? But to me, this was a novel experience.
Wow.
I just picked up the phone. I called them. I said, I got the appointment day wrong. I can get there in about 35 minutes probably. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, no problem. They were like, we have a 40-minute grace period at Vanderbilt because people drive in from all over the state. They're like, yeah, and since you called, don't worry about it. We'll tell the doctor. She's just going to see whether a patient before she sees you. Take your time, get in. And then I just took a deep breath and I went and picked up Maggie from daycare, and then I drove to the appointment and we made it and we got the diagnosis and the whatever that we needed, and everything was fine. And there was a version of Annie that never could have done that, that never could have just clearly thought in that moment, like, I'm going to call.
To not have a panic response.
I would just have a panic response and just burn everything down around me.
Right.
And be like, I don't even need this fucking doctor.
Yeah, like, fuck that doctor that I got the appointment wrong.
Yeah. And I remember that moment. I remember crying on the way to the appointment, like happy tears. Because I was like,
a breakthrough.
It was a breakthrough. It was like, wow, people have just been living like this?
Yes.
Their whole lives?
That is it. People have just been living like this.
Yes. And there are people that... There are people that live like that, and I bet it's a very high likelihood that they'll tell you that they started an SSRI 5 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess for anyone listening, I just, again, want to reiterate, like, there is no award for suffering.
God, no.
There's no award for suffering.
No.
You don't get a medal at the end of the day for muscling through anything. So if you can take the edge off of stressful situations,
just do it.
Or just like everything, like,
yeah,
it truly, like, I can't stress enough how much it's changed my life. And I will say I did attempt to go off of it once.
You did?
I did, and it didn't work. Like, I did feel the difference.
Yeah.
And, it's hard as a woman too, because you're like, am I just PMS?
Well, and people put us in the crazy, like people put women in the crazy corner. Like, I call it the crazy corner.
Yeah.
I use this example when I'm fighting with my husband, where I'm like, you're putting me in the crazy corner. You're putting me in the corner where it's like my response, everything that I do right now
is crazy.
Is going to be labeled as crazy, but like this is a true human emotion that I'm feeling.
Yep.
And that's the experience of womanhood. It's like you're experiencing it. So like get help and treatment for it instead of just constantly trying to pretend like it's not happening.
Yes.
Yes. I feel so passionately about this topic.
Me
and
too.
It's because of you.
Aw.
Yeah.
I made her do it.
You made me do it.
I pushed you towards it because I was very surprised just knowing like
Me.
knowing you and knowing like your kind of energy around like how like being anxious and like having socially anxious responses to a lot of different things. I was like, how are you not taking medication?
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, get the goods.
And what's been fun, and I know my parents will listen to this, but like they have both said, well, it's funny because like, they're wonderful parents, but like parents cause a lot of anxious behaviors, like because things happen.
Sure.
It's like I'm not mad at them, but that's just the reality.
No, I'm sure we're doing. Yes, it's what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is, and like we're all in a place now where we can talk about that together. But it's just so funny because they've been like, "Yeah, you're just like so great to be around." Like they're giving me so many compliments, which is really sweet, and it's true because I'm just a less anxious parent. I'm a less anxious daughter, and then now I'm like, maybe you guys should try it.
Yeah.
By the way,
Your turn.
But I want to share one last thing and then we can wrap up. Because I also tried to go off it.
Yeah.
Or I tried to go down even more on my dose because, again, like something just really like, again, another sort of unbelievable and sad thing happened in my personal life. And I emailed my psychiatrist and I was like, I think I'm numb. I think that the numbness is happening that I've always feared because I'm not reacting the way that I thought I would react. Or I'm like very clear in this moment.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not crying all the time. Like I cried, but I was like, I'm not crying all the time. I'm not like
what's happened to me?
What's going on?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to go down on my dose. I don't think I'm feeling the feelings I should be feeling right now. This is a really big deal. And she's like, why don't you come in and let's talk face to face? So I go in and I'm explaining the reactions that I'm having, where I'm like having these lucid and present conversations about what happened. And I'm like being very pragmatic in how I'm approaching it and thinking about it. And I doubted myself so deeply that my response was like, so I need to get off this medicine so that like,
so I can like rage appropriately.
Yeah, so I can rage appropriately around so that Noah Khan can make me cry again.
Right.
And then it was like, well, no, it's just not making you cry because like you have the tools you need now to like appropriately deal with this.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting in her office, like we were on like a couch like this and I was just like, it was like Karate Kid, Like I was like, wait a second. My whole life, I could have just dealt with like confrontation or trauma or things like this. This is what some people do. And she's like, this is just you're processing it,
just like in a more healthy manner.
Yeah. She's like, your body's not just immediately going into fight or flight and you're not just trying to like burn everything down. I use that analogy a lot, but like burn everything down around you. It's clearly a strong metaphor in my life. No, but fire too.
Right. But
like, I just clearly was like, okay, this is what I got to do. This is what I got to think about. And that was a very full circle moment.
That is full circle. That's a great story.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. So everybody, if you're the person sitting there thinking you don't need therapy or an SSRI, we're here to tell you you probably do.
You probably do. Explore it. See if it's for you. Mm-hmm. Just give it a shot. You don't have to stay on. Also, you do realize nothing's permanent. Like you can go on something and then go off of it.
Yeah.
Like nothing is like a lifelong decision.
Yeah. And I feel like every drug, there's another thing that sucks about being a woman where every drug that's really wonderful has this like 1% side effect of weight gain.
Yeah.
And so I'm also here to tell you that like it's probably worth it to gain 3 pounds and have your mental clarity there.
I would agree with that.
And also like that's probably not going to happen anyway. So don't use that as an excuse.
Yeah. Definitely don't use that as an excuse.
But you've heard that excuse.
100%.
All the time.
I think, That's when I was saying that I didn't have any side effects, that was one of the ones I was referring to.
Yeah.
So that's not true.
They just they have to write that down because someone somewhere.
Maybe you're happier, so you're eating more.
Right. Yeah. Love that reframe.
Right?
Maybe you're like,
you're happier, so you're like, yeah, I'll have the cake.
Yeah. And then cool, you gained a couple lbs. You'll be okay.
Yeah. And then you get to eat cake and everyone's life is better.
Yeah. All right.
That's a good way to wrap up. Mm-hmm. Well, I hope this helps. I hope it helps at least one person, but if it helps one person, it was worth having the conversation.
I hope it helps every parent that listens to this too.
Yes.
Really
every parent,
hard.
every adult going through anything that's difficult, this is for you. This one's for you.
I remember this doctor was like, you just can't parent 100% sober. And that really resonated with me. I was like, that's true. You can't. I mean,
that's beautiful.
Maybe some people can. Good for you, but it's really hard.
Yeah. Don't parent sober. Get an SSRI. That's our slogan of the episode.
Yeah. We'll get sweatshirts for it.
Well, this has been Joelle.
This has been Annie.
And we will catch you next time.
You're great.
Love you. Bye.